guys, so today we're going to be stringing a tennis racket with the two-piece method, and I talked about this briefly in my how to string a tennis racket video, and in that video we used the one-piece method, but I mentioned if you wanted to use two different types of strings or something like that, what they call a hybrid, that you would utilize this method. So we're going to be doing that today. If you have any questions about what we're doing or anything with the two-piece method, be sure to comment them below, and I'll try and answer them the best I can. We're not going to go over every little part of stringing in great detail, because I went over all of that and made a lot of edits and added context to a bunch of things we were doing in that video, and almost everything in that video would apply to this one, except for the stringing method that we're doing, obviously. But clamping, checking the loops, tying the knots, almost all of it's the exact same. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mount the racket. This one has 8 holes, 4 loops at the bottom. So we're going to start stringing at the top. I'm going to move this closer. You want to find the center of the racket. Sometimes it has a little logo or a little symbol or a little dot at the top. And you just want to stick this at the middle of the bottom. Like I mentioned in the other video, if you aren't sure how to mount the racket on your machine, look at the instruction manual for it, and it ought to give you instructions on how to do so. So we're going to make sure it's nice and secure, not going anywhere. So for this stringing, we're going to use a multi-filament. That's what the customer requested. A multi-filament main and a polyester cross. So we're going to find the hole. We're going to line it up. Having some difficulty here. There we go. I don't know what that was. I normally don't have that much trouble with it. Let's see. So you want to put them in just like this, but the difference between two-piece and one-piece is we're not going to count off 9 mains and then the rest of the string is going to do the racket. All of this string that we have right here, this multi-filament, this clear string, this is going to do only the mains. So we're not doing the crosses, we're doing the mains. So we're going to get both ends, and we are going to make sure that they are lined up. So we want to have an even amount of string on both sides of the racket. Make sure that's flush, yeah. And then another easy way to tell is you just walk it back, or you can walk it back and line the two ends up if you have enough room. I like to do that to double check myself. Alright, so we look good to go. Here we are. Now we're going to clamp towards, what am I hung on? I'm hung on clippers. The top of the frame. Just like so. Okay, so now we're going to do everything pretty much the exact same that we would like we were doing the one piece method. We're going to pull tension on 3 mains on one side. We're going to switch to 4 on the other side. And then we're going to alternate every 2, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. This should be our last main on both sides. So I'm going to hit my knot button, which is the pre-stretch button. And you want to do that on your last cross. And that just makes up for the tension you lose when you're tying it off. Okay. Get it as close to the frame as I can. Clamp. Let me see if I can. Okay, so I'm going to go over tying a knot very quickly. So we're going to find the hole closest to where we are getting ready to tie off. So we just pull tension here, and we're looking for a hole that's large enough for us to put another string through and tie off. And ideally you want to be as close to this other string that you just pulled. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down and up underneath this string, You're going to go down and up. So we're going to do it one more time. We're going to go down and up of the string. That's the same string that's in the hole that we're putting the string back into. We're going to pull it through. It's going to make a little loop. We're going to go down and we're going to go back up through this little loop, just like that. We're going to take our pliers, going to pull up and down. We're going to tighten this, just like that. And you want to keep pulling tension here when you release the clamp. You don't want to just release the clamp with the knot as it is. You want to have tension on it, or you want to be pulling it to prevent, damage and that sort of stuff. Need to find somewhere to put this. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so we're backed up now. We're going to pull tension on this other main. To find the hole closest. And you want, this is important with the two-piece method, you want to tie your two main strings off on the same string on both sides. What am I doing? Okay, that's what I'm doing. So if I tie one on this string, I'm going to tie my other one on the same string. So pull out, down, pull through, and pull tension, release the clamp. All right. So now we're done with our mains. And as you can see, both mains are tied off on the same main string. That's very important. Because if you don't tie them off on the same string, like if you tie one off here, let me see if you can see that, you should be. If you tie one off on the third, if you tie one on the fourth, then it just throws it off and you're putting uneven pressure on the racket. So you want to have both of your knots on the same string on both sides. Okay, so now we're going to put our glide bar this way. And if you're using swivel clamps, then you don't have to worry about changing the bars or anything. You already have that in there. Let's find a good end on this one. So now this is the two-piece method without a starting clamp. So we're not going to do anything with a starting clamp because not everybody has one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find our top main, which is here, if you can see that. You may not be able to see it exactly, but there's a main here, it skips, there's another, sorry, not a main, a cross. There's a cross here, and then you skip a grommet because that's where the mains are. And then you have a second cross, and then you have another cross, and then it goes all the way down, and then it starts to skip it again. So I'm going to find the largest hole, which is here. And we're going to tie a knot here, and then we're going to start our crosses. So let me move you a little bit closer so you can see how to tie off for the. When you tie off for the cross, you're going to tie off a little bit differently when you're starting the crosses, if you don't have a starting clamp, because you want the knot to be bigger so it doesn't get sucked through the grommet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down and up, just like we did for like we do when we're tying the mains. Let me see if I'm moving it out of the way. Yeah, there we go. Let me put this lock bar out so I don't move the, whoops. There we go. And I'm gonna go down and up a second time. So what does that leave us? We have 2 loops. You may not be able to see that. Oh, you can't see that. Okay, great. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the end and we're going to put it through the first one and then back through the second one. So we're going to go through this first loop, through that first loop that we just made. And then we're going to lift up this second loop and we're going to go through and it's going to look kind of like a pretzel. And then you pull it through. We're going to do that one more time. So we're going to go down and up, down and up. We're going to go through, and then we're going to go through again, just like that. We're going to try and make this as flush as we can before we pull tension. And I'll take this and I'll use it to help pull this other end down a little bit. And I'm not using my machine, I'm doing all this with my hands. And now we have our starting knot for our crosses. So now we've got our cross, our starting knot for our cross. We're going to find the edge of our string. We're going to find our first cross. We're going to stick it in the grommet. And we're going to decide what we're going to do. We're going to start with I start with an under here, but you can do an over, it doesn't matter. As long as you keep your pattern the same. So I'm going under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. We're going to stick it through on the other side. Get this organized a little bit there. We're going to check our work here. So under, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Okay, we're in good shape. So we're going to weave, pull down and up, down and up. If you're using a rough string on a softer string like a multi-filament, just be a little bit more careful with it because you don't want to cut through the string and wear it out too quickly. So you want to be as careful as you can. Now, if you remember our one-piece video, we would pull tension on this cross. But we're not going to do that here because all of that pressure is going to be pulled on this knot. And that's not good for your frame. So we're not going to do that. Whereas if we started our cross, it'd be pulling tension on another string. But it's all that pressure is going to be built up right there. We don't want that. So we're going to find our next cross. And we're going to weave it to the best of our ability. Yeah, this is a little too tight. When you don't pull tension, it'll, not that you are pulling tension here, but normally it's harder to weave the cross at first because the string is just kind of sagging. It's not being pulled on anything. And once you pull tension, it becomes easier to weave. So over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Okay, we're good. So now we're going to do what we did on the first cross. being as careful as we can to not saw through the string. And the only reason I say that is because this string is called Solinco Hyper G. Most of you, or some of you, may know what this string is. But it has edges on it because it's like a square shape. And edged polyester strings will cut through the string fairly quickly. So you want to be careful when you're weaving it through. So we started with the under here and we weaved it through, alternating. We ended with an over. Now we have to change our pattern because we've added some main strings in there. So we're going to start with an over and then alternate all the way through and then get to an under. If you started with an under, the next string would be an over and you finished with an over on your first cross. So you don't want that to happen. So you want to look and make sure that you're alternating every single time. So it's like you're weaving a basket. We're going to find our third cross. And we're going to weave through the best that we can. I'm probably going to have to wait until we pull tension to weave it like I normally would. Let's check our work one last time. Under, over, 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 under, over. Okay, so this is where, well, besides the starting knot, this is our first big change between the 1 and 2 piece method. We have a loop here. We have a big loop of string. So we're going to pull tension on this loop first. That's closest to the knot. We're going to pull tension here. And it's going to pull tension on both of these strings. And I like to just kind of go back and make sure my knot looks as good as it is going to look. So we can straighten our strings a little bit here. Make sure everything looks good. And we're going to clamp. And we're just going to continue the crosses like we normally would. check ourselves. Under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Yep, we're good to go. All right, so now we're on our last cross. So we're going to use our knot button. And pull tension. Is that going to clamp? Yep, that'll clamp. Okay, we're going to cut some of this string. We don't need it. Can we get it in this cross? Nope, that is highly doubtful. So we're going to find our next biggest opening, which happens to be here. And we're going to tie this just like we did these knots at the top. So we're going to go down. We're going to go up through the loop, make this little loop. We'll go down, we're going to go through this little loop that we just made. Just like so. We use our clippers, or pliers, not clippers. Pull up, pull down, tighten this knot up, use our pliers, go down, and pull tension, and then release. And we're done for the most part. We're going to go and we're going to trim these tail ends up a little bit better. We're going to take this off here. All right, and we've got a racket that is strung with the two-piece method. Give it the old peaks and valleys test. Let me see if I can line it up for you on the camera. And that's what I was mentioning earlier with the two different strings. It's a lot easier to tell if you've made a mistake or not. Go this way. But yeah, that's how you do the two-piece method. As you can see, we have our main string as one different string and then our cross as another. And if you want me to make a video about what the different types of strings do for your game and what they would do for you overall, like a pros and cons list sort of, let me know down below. If you need any more explanation or an explanation on something else, or if you want me to go over something in more detail, please let me know. Again, I'm going to put timestamps in that first video that I made, how to string a racket. I go in a lot more in depth about how to mount the racket, what to look for, where to look for skips, the knot button I was telling you about, locking it into place, the lock bar that keeps this from swiveling, how to clamp, all sorts of stuff. Even details like, where's a good example right here, like where to put your strings when you go through. So watch that video if you have any questions about stuff like that. If you still can't find what you're looking for, or if you have anything or have a question that's left unanswered, please let me know. And I will see you later. Stay safe, and thanks a ton.